Shalom. All praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh, the King of Terrors, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Bracha, Kodash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth, as well as men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy to the elect of the nation of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom, beginning with the 144,000 prophets, and Yahweh, the King of Terrors, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, willing. This lesson is edifying and informative. My name is Kwanawaf, and in the news from the RT, NATO rift widens as Trump eyes troop withdrawal from Germany, which Germany is one of the U.S.'s NATO ally. The U.S. president has vowed to reduce the American military footprint on the continent after feuding with European leaders over the Iran war. The Pentagon has ordered the withdrawal of approximately 5,000 troops from Germany, with U.S. President Donald Trump warning that the pullout could only be the beginning. The beginning of what? The beginning of the United States' ultimate and inevitable withdrawal from NATO, totally. The move comes amid a sharp divide between the Trump administration and European NATO members over the Iran war. Washington's calls to increase defense spending and the bitter aftertaste from the dispute over Greenland. Cutting a lot further, the withdrawal was announced on Friday, with the Pentagon signaling that the process would be over within the next 6 to 12 months. The Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said that the decision follows a thorough review of the department's force posture in Europe and is in recognition of threat requirements and conditions on the ground. However, Trump, who has for years been toying with the idea of a U.S. withdrawal from the bloc, signaled that the figure could be even higher. We're going to cut way down, and we're cutting a lot further than 5,000. Recall that 70% of the NATO's military is the United States military. Okay? The majority of NATO's military is comprised of the U.S. military. Right? It says, he said on Saturday. He also suggested that he could pull troops out of Spain and Italy, nations he said were unhelpful in the Iran war. In addition, Reuters reported that the U.S. dropped a Biden-era plan to deploy a U.S. battalion with long-range Tomahawk missiles to Germany. Germany is home to America's largest military presence in Europe, currently hosting more than 36,000 active duty U.S. personnel. It is also home to critical training, logistics, and medical infrastructure, including Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, the largest U.S. military hospital abroad. In total, there are over 80,000 U.S. troops in Europe, with many having been redeployed to the continent by the Biden administration after the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022. Iran war looms over the decision. The announcement came days after German Chancellor Friedrich Merz once again criticized the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran, saying that Washington obviously has no strategy, adding, referring to the U.S., that an entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership. It did not take Trump long to fire a broadside in response. He declared that Merz doesn't know what he's talking about, advising the chancellor to spend more time on ending the war with Russia-Ukraine and fixing his broken country. So they're playing tit for tat. He also suggested that Merz was doing a terrible job. He's got immigration problems. He's got energy problems. He's got problems of all kinds. According to Reuters, the current transatlantic rift has been exacerbated by Trump's simmering anger over European pushback to his attempt to annex Greenland this winter. And this rift will only continue to widen, according to biblical prophecy, until the relationship between America and its European allies have concluded, according to biblical prophecy. Because it states in the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter, that the beast shall hate the whore, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And pursuant to the book of Obadiah, the 1st chapter, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. That is, all the men of America's Confederacy, including our European allies in the NATO and the EU. Right? So, it reads on U.S. schizophrenic, if I pronounce that correctly. According to an AP source, the U.S. military was not been warned. I suppose it meant to say it has not, or wasn't warned, of the decision to pull troops from Germany and learned about it in real time. Though the Pentagon disagreed, saying it follows a comprehensive, multi-layer process with input from the European Command and other top officials. Read more. Trump announces new tariffs against EU, which is bad news for the relationship between the U.S. and her European allies. In addition, an unnamed European insider told Reuters that Trump's decision was another sign of an increasingly unpredictable and sometimes schizophrenic dynamic. And that word means affected with or relating to the mental health condition of schizophrenia, characterized by inconsistent or contradictory elements. And so in other words, they're calling this guy sick. He's going mad. He's a madman. dynamic. He noted that Trump's shock announcement came as uniformed U.S. military commanders in Europe had been talking up commitment and cooperation, just as their counterparts in Washington were doing the opposite. Thus, it seemed contradictory, bugged out. U.S. lawmakers have also protected the withdrawal announcement. The Republican chairman of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees saying they were very concerned by the drawdown. Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi and Republican Mike Rogers of Alabama urged the Pentagon to redeploy the troops eastward rather than send them home. The countries that have made substantial investments to host U.S. troops on NATO's front line, warning the decision risked undermining deterrence and sending the wrong signal to Russia. Multi-buildup as planned. And this is the last portion of this article. And then Lord's willing, we'll get the scripture and then conclude the lesson. This has just been another report of what's been transpiring in the news around the globe and filtering it through the scriptures concerning biblical prophecy. All right? German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, if I pronounced his last name correctly, played down the news, calling the drawdown foreseeable. The Defense Ministry spokesperson also said the development showed we must strengthen the European pillar within NATO. And according to the biblical prophecy, that's not going to happen, especially as we approach the end. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk was blunter, saying that the greatest threat to NATO is not its external enemies, but rather its ongoing disintegration. And the word disintegration means the process of losing cohesion or strength. So the unity between the NATO allies are disintegrating. It's losing strength. It's becoming weakened. And eventually, it's going to fall apart, according to biblical prophecy. We know so pursuant to Revelation 17 and Obadiah. Okay? We must all do what it takes to reverse this disastrous trend. And again, it's not going to reverse. Can't reverse this trend. The trend of prophecy will only continue to rise. With strong spiritual momentum. Still, overall trend of the U.S. detachment from Europe barely comes as a shock, because the Allies are now anticipating an eventual U.S. withdrawal from the bloc. Okay? It's not coming as a shock. Certain allies. But European NATO members looking to ramp up military spending. The rearmament drive was partly driven by Trump himself, who pushed other NATO members to invest 5% of GDP annually in core defense and defense-related spending by 2035, which we ain't got that long. Lord's willing, the Lord hastens the day and delivers us out of here sooner rather than later, because all we're looking for is for the Lord to put the Spirit upon the elites of Esau, Edom, to mandate the mark of the beast across the globe, which will hasten the end, which we pray for, right? We hasten the day daily. On top of that, the European Commissioner unveiled its Readiness 2030 plan, which aims to provide more than 800 billion, which is equivalent to 938 billion, right? 800 billion euros, equivalent to $938 billion in defense spending across the EU. Germany alone has embarked on a historic military buildup, committing to spend more than 500 billion euros on defense by 2029. And this is an example of nations beating their plowshares into swords, pursuant to the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, and they're putting hooks into spears. That is to say, taking their economic wealth and pouring it into the research, development, enhancements / modifications of weapons of mass destruction, especially ICBM nuclear missiles, which, pursuant to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 25, are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, right? In closing, this report Moscow has consistently rejected speculation that it could attack NATO as nonsense, suggesting that European nations are using propaganda to portray Russia as an enemy to mask its own crisis. That concludes the article. Now let's get the book of Revelation 17, verse 16, and that was quite a lengthy article. But nonetheless, Revelation chapter 17, verse 16, it says, "And the 10 horns, which represents the EU, which thou sawest upon the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns," which represents NATO. Okay. Essentially, the pagan Roman Empire, which came back in the form of NATO and the EU, with America being an extension of that empire. As America, Babylon the Great, this woman, scarlet array, riding upon the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, right? And so the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the poor. So they're going to hate America, Babylon the Great. And we were seeing that hatred in real time. In fact, we've been seeing that hatred increase over the past 6 months to a year. And shall make her desolate by what? Shoot nuclear missiles upon her, and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And this is according to biblical prophecy, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not. All right, America's allies will turn against her, and it's written right here in the scriptures. This is the book of Obadiah 1 and 7. It says, "All the men of that confederacy," "com" means with, confederacy means agreement. And so all the men of America's confederacy, Babylon the Great, that has agreement with, including and especially its European allies, have brought the EU into the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. And the time is coming when they're going to blatantly show the whole world that, look, we're not in agreement as we once were with this great whore. Now we are at odds. Now we are enemies. All right, so reading on. and prevail against thee. Because they're going to prevail by and through shooting their nuclear missiles upon her, according to biblical prophecy. They eat that bread as they're doing now through trade, through traffic. Have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him, because this man is proud. And he has a God complex. He believes that he's like the Most High. He truly believes that his house shall continue forever, because that's his inward thought. But the Lord is laying a trap for him, a snare. And that is the snare of destruction by way of thermonuclear fire, according to biblical prophecy, written up throughout the scriptures. You can refer to Revelation 18, Isaiah 13, the latter end of the chapter, Revelation 9, Revelation 8, Joel, the second chapter, Jeremiah 49, Jeremiah 50, 51, Baruch, the 4th chapter, the latter end of the chapter, many others, right? America, Babylon, the Great will be destroyed according to biblical prophecy by way of thermonuclear fire. Whether you believe that, whether you like to hear that or not, it's in the scriptures. And the Lord is not a man that he should lie, as it is written. So with that, I'll conclude this lesson. Lord's willing, that has been edifying to the elect of the nation of Israel that are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great and abroad. And to USA, Shalom. I'll catch you brothers and few sisters, Lord's willing, in the next lesson.